Hey guys, it's Mr. Dugal, and today we're going to talk about doing different operations using scientific notations. We're going to go over multiplying with scientific notation, and then we're going to do a separate example to discuss dividing with scientific notation, and then finally we're going to do one that's adding with scientific notation, but the same rules apply when subtracting. So first, when we do multiplying with scientific notation, the two things that we need to look at is our base 10 with the exponent. So there's our base 10 numbers, and then we have our number with the decimal in front. So when I look at these different terms, I treat them as different. That's why I've done two different things to them. The highlighted blue numbers here, the operation is to multiply. So we actually are going to multiply 3.4 by 4.8. When I multiply 3 and 4/10 times 4 and 8/10, I get 16.32 as my answer. Again, that's just these two multiplied together. Just to help us, we're going to follow the color scheme. I'm going to take my times 10, and we're going to add our exponents. If you remember, our product rule for exponents is that when we multiply two numbers together, we add the exponents if our bases are the same. So our bases are the same. We have two 10s. We have a to the 5th power and to the 6th power. When I add 5 and 6, this should become 10 to the 11th. This answer is close to being not done now, but I do have a little bit of an issue. We have 16.32 times 10 to the 11th. I want you to stop and think about what else needs done in this situation. Okay, the other thing that needs done in this situation is that our number here is still in the tens place. It needs to be moved to the ones place. So simply do that by moving this decimal over 1, be 1.632. And in order to produce my answer in an equivalent value, I would need to also up the number of tens that I'd be multiplying by. In other words, these two would be equal because 16.32, we'd move the decimal places over 11 from this point, and 1.632, we'd move the decimal to the right 12 times from that point, meaning they are equivalent. This answer here is my answer in final form, 1.632 times 10 to the 12th. And that is my final answer. So just to review how we did that when we multiply with scientific notation, we go back and we multiply our two numbers in front together, and then we also multiply our two base 10 exponents together as well. When I add my two base 10 exponents together, remember, because I'm multiplying, I do add the exponents. In a different lesson we discussed, this is called the product rule, when we multiply with exponents when the bases are the same. Okay, moving on to dividing with scientific notation. It's fairly similar in some ways, where we are going to do the operation at hand with our front two numbers. So we are going to actually go ahead and divide 12.43 divided by 5.8. And when I divide 12.43 and 5.8, we get a really long decimal that we're just going to round to 2 and 1400ths. Now, when I go to evaluate my base 10 with the exponent here, we have 10 to the 7th divided by 10 to the 3rd. We learned from the quotient rule when it comes to our different exponent rules that when we divide exponents that have the same base, we subtract. So here we have times 10 we've got to the 7th and to the 3rd. We know that 7 minus 3 is 4, so this should be 10 to the 4th. I want you to go ahead and evaluate if there's anything further that needs done, or if our answer is in the correct scientific notation at this point. Unlike the previous question with multiplying with scientific notation, in this case, our number is at the ones point here. In our previous question, if you remember, we did have it in the tens place, so we needed to take the extra step. Sometimes it will be like our first example. Sometimes once we do that step, we will end up already in final form. So in this case, we are in final form. My final answer is 2 1400ths. Again, that number was rounded, times 10 to the 4th. And that is all I need to do for dividing with scientific notation. Finally, we have adding and subtracting with scientific notation. And in some ways, students find this one to be the trickiest, just because with our multiplying and dividing with scientific notation, with multiplying with scientific notation, we just follow the product rule. With dividing with scientific notation, we just find our quotient rule. With this one, we actually have to move our decimals over, and there is not a rule that we've used in the past in this case. So what I need to do is, right now I have 6.84 times 10 to the 7th plus 4.85 times 10 to the 5th. What I need to evaluate is how can I move my larger decimal so that it is in the same form as my other base 10 exponent. So right now I have 10 to the 7th, and I want 10 to the 7th to become 10 to the 5th. So how could I make 10 to the 7th become 10 to the 5th? If I look back at my earlier example with multiplying with scientific notation, I know that when I changed 16.32 to 1.632, I moved my decimal to the left, so I upped the exponent. In this case, I want to make my exponent go down, so I'm going to move my decimal to the right instead of to the left. So instead of it being 6.84, 6 8400ths, it's going to be 684 times 10 to the 5th plus 4 8500ths times 10 to the 5th. Okay, now that I have a like exponents here, I can line these up and go ahead and add them. So I'm going to add 684. So I'm going to go ahead and add 684 plus 4.85. Make sure that when we add with decimals, we line up the decimal and not the numbers. When I go ahead and add here, I get 0 plus 5, and then 0 plus 8. 0 plus 5 is 5, 0 plus 8 is 8. Then put the decimal down. I'm going to add 4 and 4 is 8. Bring down the 8 and the 6. I'm left with 688.5, and that's times 10 to the 5th because that's what our bases were. If I were to subtract using scientific notation, I would follow the exact same method. The easiest way, again, to do this, rather than bringing the smaller level of exponents up, it's easier actually if we bring the larger exponent down. So those are some tips for multiplying, dividing, and adding and subtracting with scientific notation. Hopefully this helps as an introduction to this unit. Thanks so much for watching.